So before we started our roundtable, I thought it'd be good. You have quite an interesting history, and I think it relates pretty directly to what we'll be speaking about with our roundtable members. So I wanted to ask you a few questions, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So you recently joined us from Unilever. Can you tell us a little bit about what your role was there and why you joined Sanity?
Yeah, I've been with Unilever quite a large part of my career. I started initially as a graphic designer, which then got pulled into technology. And in 2007, someone asked me to join Unilever to help them with a global technology platform. And at that time, this was really exciting. So I joined, I stopped coding myself, which is something I'm looking forward to do a bit more now with the new job. But since then, I've had quite a few roles. Most of the roles were in the global IT department, so the global IT for marketing, where we were creating consumer experience platforms which help brands creating their websites and their presence and their campaigns. And in 2014, this is when I moved to the UK, I became the product owner of the new iteration of these global platforms, which we were creating, which was newer and better and bigger and more marketing led. And then in 2017, I've met Phil Hawksworth. I think he also joined this event today. So hello, Phil. And he introduced me to the Jamstack when he talked about his talk at Smashing Conference, which was about I can smell your CMS. And this is where the whole headless CMS topic was kind of introduced to me. And it just opened really a new dimension to separate the content and the way things are being displayed, making it more stable and reliable with the Jamstack approach. So this is really my last role was on the marketing side. So I joined the hair department, so the hair category with all the shampoo brands, end of 2 years ago, roughly. And this is where I then introduced and pushed the needle to do more in this Jamstack approach for our websites.
So the digital landscape sort of changed while you were there. You had your ear to the ground, and you sort of saw the writing on the wall. How was Unilever's digital experience like when you started, and how did it change over time?
That's a good question. It changed a lot. It changed from being an annex to media. I think initially brands just wanted to have a way of displaying things in advertisement, and the next move was really, where do we point these ads and banners to? So every brand had to create their own website. Everyone was doing it separately. So every brand in each market was kind of asking an agency to do this. So there was a good reason for us to introduce central platforms, central technology platforms where we would obviously be more efficient with, but also being more compliant. So having a way of orchestrating some of these features and making sure that if new privacy regulations came in, for example, we could do this at scale and not having to contact each brand and each market. Since then, I think quite a few things happened. I mean, I'm just going to go through that quite quickly. In 2007, we already had a headless platform, which was kind of groundbreaking and maybe ahead of its time. But it was when we were creating Flash websites. So we needed a way for content authors to author the content and display that in Flash applications. So this is kind of an interesting anecdote. We then moved to a more monolithic approach to achieve exactly what I was saying earlier, to really make things more scalable and more repeatable. And it was in 2014 with the last version of this central platform where we moved to a more marketing-oriented solution where brands were changing their attitude towards digital. It was becoming not a separate engine to their normal marketing. So it was more integrated. Brands wanted to become publishers. They really wanted to change the consumer experience. So this is when we selected a new tool globally. And I think it was great to enable some of the features, but it was also challenging. It was challenging in order to really fulfill the needs of each individual brand. So to create something which is monolithic in that case is not really helping you. So this is where in 2017, I started to explore more the decoupled architecture. And this is where I started to experiment, and this is how I discovered Sanity at a Jamstack conference at a meetup where I met Knut, who's the DevRel lead today at Sanity. And yeah, this is how things came together.
All right, be honest though. Why did you choose us over all your options when you came to Sanity? What was the driving factor for using us for your digital transformation?
I think it is the event where I met Knut, which really made click for me, right? So I realized that the presenters at that meetup were presenting an ERP system for e-commerce, and another person was presenting a website with decoupled content. So it really showed the flexibility. And when I digged a bit deeper and looked at all the options, the concept of having that studio separated from the data really made this work for me. So this allows you to modify the studio in a way that makes the authoring an intuitive task for the authors. So you reduce the effort of explaining. The manuals get smaller if they don't disappear completely. I always use the analogy of the iPhone. Nobody reads a booklet about how to use the phone or how to use any apps on that. So it's just intuitive. And this is what you can create with the studio being part of your code.
Good to know. I think last question maybe is, what is it like to work in a startup environment? I think the people that we're going to bring on for the table work with organizations and enterprises of all different sizes. And I think you're well positioned to talk about the difference between working at a large enterprise versus working at a startup like ours.
So this is an interesting question, because I don't know if it's really working at a startup or working at Sanity, which makes it so special. But I've been amazed by the people. And, I always use these three areas of people, process, and technology. But the people really stand out in the Sanity, in Sanity. So it's the community in the first place. I really like the vibrant community where there is such an exchange and it's so alive. And then with it working in Sanity, I mean, I'm only here since beginning of March, so I'm still in the early days, but it's just amazing to see the passion and the dedication of all the people in the teams.
Good, thank you. It's really nice to hear. With that said, then I think maybe we can start bringing on our roundtable members. I'd love to bring Rachael Thompson on the stage. She's a developer advocate at BigCommerce, an open SaaS e-commerce platform. Welcome.
Hi, hello.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Next, I also have Lars Peterson, who's co-founder of Uniform. Uniform brings the personalization features of a digital experience platform to Jamstack applications. Is that right?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. And last, I have Filippo Conforti, who is the CEO of Commerce Layer, a headless commerce platform and order management system. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you. Thank you for coming. I'm really excited to speak with you guys. We work a lot with people who are in e-commerce, and we have, in my role as solution engineer, I talk to them a lot about their needs, but I think you guys have a really good insight into what they need. So I'm hoping to learn a lot. My first question is, why do you think people are moving towards headless architecture in e-commerce? You all kind of work in that sort of space. But I thought I'd ask you first, Filippo, since you started your company not even thinking about ahead, you started out headless. Why was that the move you went towards?
Yeah, but I think that there are many reasons for sure. When you talk, it depends on when you talk to marketers, the possibility to unlock their creativity. It's one very important driver, because when you go headless, you get the freedom of creating any customer experience without having any limitation provided by your monolithic platform. So this is number one. Number two is performance, for sure. I mean, not in order of importance. It's performance is really one of the one of the drivers, because again, when you have a headless solution, your head becomes much more lightweight, and so it becomes much faster. You can work on the Jamstack, and so performance is something that both developers and marketers and content editors can understand. And then, I think also the being omnichannel is another driver, because we always speak about websites, but it's not just about websites. It's about customer touch point. And ultimately, I would say to be future-proof, because we don't really know what is coming next. And so if you go headless, you get your organization ready for whatever it is coming next. So that's maybe another good reason.
That's interesting to hear. I was wondering also, I think speaking of being future-proof, I think we spoke about this a little bit with you, Lars. You used to work in a more monolithic application. You used to work in a space that was fairly ingrained, and decided to move to this sort of Jamstack headless space with all of those benefits that Filippo just described. Can you describe that journey, like why you also were thinking about the future in that way?
Yeah, and essentially it echoes a lot of what we have heard here. Enterprises have been locked in with monolithic suites. It didn't used to be a big problem if we go back 2012, 2015, where integration was hard. But now integration is easy. Everyone comes with an API. And a lot of the enterprises that are using these monolithic suites, they are realizing now that the sites that they are creating and the performance of those sites are lagging behind. And the rules have changed. Google have begun to factor in performance on how they index pages, how they index sites. So now you really have to be performant, and many of these monolithic suites are not performant by default. And then second is that JavaScript run the web. So when you work with a monolith, you typically have certain paradigms of this is how we create our site, this is how we create our storefront, this is how we build the app. And now you're also logged in not only to those paradigms, but you also need to have very specialized resources in order to actually create a new component or build a new app using a monolithic suite. And at the same time, we have the different JavaScript frameworks that is just getting more and more traction. So enterprises don't want to be locked into this is how we should do it. They want to be set free. And one driver for that is really COVID, because as COVID began to hit, then enterprises need to change faster. And that essentially made them go back and reevaluate how fast are we now? And if it, with a more monolithic approach, it could take 30 days to just launch a new component. And at the same time, when you look at the Jamstack approach and headless architecture, that can be done within hours, within days, and not weeks and months. So what we're really seeing now is that acceleration of enterprises who want to move much faster. We are seeing these different trends. Performance is now a key thing that you need to consider, as well as you need to make sure that it also connects to the developers and the great developer experience that they want to do. So the journey I have taken from coming from a more monolithic platform world to this headless architecture that is much more decoupled and much more composable has really been amazing, realizing how we can connect performance, developer productivity and flexibility with the freedom of different tools and vendors to really help enterprises move faster in this world.
It's really interesting that you bring up playing in the larger ecosystem. I want to come back to that. But I also wanted to make sure I spoke to you, Ray, since I think BigCommerce is interesting in that it offers both solutions. It offers a sort of headful solution to get you up and running, and then the headless. And I was curious if you saw people make that move, or if the developers in your ecosystem have sort of their choices transparent about why they go from one to the other.
Yeah, it's really about designing your user experience as your brand grows. So you might want to get started initially using a templatized version of a storefront, using a more regular, I can't even say that right, but a more regular storefront, a more regular experience, something that gets you up and running quickly. You have your products and your categories and everything kind of managed for you. And And then after you have that data initialized in your store, then taking that headless and doing a more unique experience, so that you have this like evolution of your business into what your actual branding and design is. You know, a lot of people want to just kind of get online, get going, especially with the pandemic. They've, you know, just really noticed that they have to do this and they have to do it quickly. But taking it the next step and realizing that, okay, now I need to focus on my brand. I need to focus on my message and my user experience to be different than the rest and stand out from the crowd.
That's really cool. I kind of pinged when I heard you mention data as well. I think the idea of getting all that data in one place and then being able to transfer it wherever you want speaks a lot to the Sanity ideas of thinking, and hopefully we can dig more into that. Markus, since you're somebody who also made this choice, did any of those reasons that you heard sort of resonate with you? And did those reflect your experience when you were making this choice to go headless?
Absolutely. I mean, as Lars mentioned, and I think all of you, right? So the experiences consumers are expecting nowadays, if they don't go to the big stores, even the big online stores, are requiring a much better consumer experience. And this goes from the performance Lars mentioned. It goes into the multi-channel offering. So they want to be able to shop where they usually go. They don't want to necessarily come to your website. So this is, for us, it was a very clear move when we had our headless websites, when we needed to start and do some D2C in these more premium categorization of products. It was a very easy decision to say, well, this is great because we already have an experience and we can now add the shopping part to it. So it's really about making experiences shoppable. And that can happen in many different places. So it can be on your website, it can be on banners, it can be in social. And this is where the headless solution really shines.
Amazing. Thank you. I think we lost Ray, but hopefully she comes back. I would like, maybe, now that we're talking about experience, maybe to jump to the other question that I had, which was about combining content and commerce and how that makes these really memorable experiences. I think that in all of our talks with you previously, you spoke about having these very sticky, curated experiences for your users. And I maybe thought it'd be good to start about talking about personalizing experience, how to build the right experience for your customers. Maybe Lars, you could speak to that.
Yeah, definitely, because the intersection is really where you have commerce, content, and context. And the context is, of course, what is the in-the-moment intent of a visitor using your channel now? That could be a website, it could be an app, could be a kiosk in the physical store. But what is your in-the-moment intent? That's the context, and then translating that to a great shopping experience. So when we think about why are those so memorable for customers, think about we all consumers here, and when we interact with different brands, we have certain expectations. So it's about meeting those expectations and then trying to exceed them. So for instance, if we go out and we go to a gourmet dinner somewhere, our expectation is pretty high because we probably read the reviews, it's amazing. If we stop by a diner somewhere on the road, probably our expectations in terms of what we are going to put in our mouth is a little bit lower than that. So what we can really drive with personalization and context for these shopping experiences is to first understand who is the visitor, what is their intent. Then we can map that with what is the expectations that we should deliver upon when we have our site app, we are in the physical store and also connecting that to a digital. And then what we should strive for as business is not only meeting those expectations, but exceeding them. Because if we are able to exceeding the expectation, then it becomes memorable. And then you have a stronger connection as a consumer to the brand. They know me, they understand my needs, and that is what creates engagement. And of course, using headless composable architecture makes it easier to blend those in different channels and then focus the strategy on what do we actually require to exceed those expectations.
Thank you. I think it's interesting that you talk about knowing expectations. That sounds like structure to me. It sounds like structuring content in a way for different segments, and obviously that resonates with me. But I think I'd also want to dig a little more into thinking about, when I think about a curated experience or an experience for a particular kind of consumer, I think back to when we spoke earlier, Filippo, about the luxury or in fashion brand world. Could you speak about how your experience there maybe fed into your current ideas about curating experiences?
Yeah, right. So I think that especially in the luxury and fashion and luxury industry, the personalization that Lars was talking about, and also the context. I love this concept of the third player. There is content, there is commerce, and there is the context, which is very true. And so you want to be, and this is really linked to also to the price point. So if you sell a premium product as a customer, if you buy a premium product as a customer, you want to be treated with white gloves. So you want to be recognized, you want to be called by your name, and this makes the difference. And so again, I think that content comes first, the experience comes first, and the commerce, the transactional part is something that should just work. It's the boring part that should just work. But again, personalization, especially as your price point goes high, it's very, very important. And the luxury customers want to be treated as such. They want to be considered with a special. They want to get a special treatment.
Got it. Thank you. I think that also speaks maybe to thinking about composability and being able to build these things custom. And Ray, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, how BigCommerce offers these different little pieces that you can add into your experience in some way. You kind of construct them out of this. I wonder if you have any experience in using parts to build something memorable.
Yeah, so really we take the idea that we are a piece of your stack. We're not the entire stack. So you can use as much or as little of our systems as you like. And that really leads to better experiences in terms of internationalization, your look and feel that you have for different regions, for instance, or being able to unlock different API integrations with other partners, and really utilizing what is best for your users as a merchant or as an enterprise software. You can take these pieces and put them together in a very unique way that leads to better performance, leads to that brand recognition, and then also gives you like ease of mind because you know that you have these other tools in your toolkit that if one doesn't work, you pop it out and you put another one in. And I think that's really where people feel a lot of security, is just because they know that if something's not working, they can switch it up.
That is interesting. I think that speaks also to the sort of future-proofing thing, right? That you have the freedom to switch things. And we speak a little bit internally about this kind of freedom and why developers and retailers might, I mean, the word itself is positive, but also, I mean, there's maybe specific reasons that you want that kind of freedom. And we spoke a little bit internally, Markus, about how the space is opening up and how that stands in contrast to bigger players like Amazon or other huge retailers. Is that just the composability, or are there other aspects, do you think, that add to that?
I think I touched on it a bit earlier, right? I think it's really the premiumization we see in the industry. So people don't come to your website to buy a bottle of something small. They usually come for more premium products. There's a trend going in that direction. And I think, as Filippo said very well, I think these people expect something more than just a storefront. And this is kind of the premium experiences we've been talking about. And I like Lars's point of exceeding the expectation. This is really when you kind of convince people to come back to you, because you just caught them with something, they feel treated well, and they come back to you.
And one thing to consider also in regards to luxury and Filippo's comments there, think about it as a marriage. The end stage is really getting married. That's buying the product. But before you buy the product or before you get married, you fall in love, and that's the role of content. That's really to build up why this product, why this brand, and essentially go from just meeting each other to the first date and so forth, and build up that relationship. That is what content can do. Storytelling and leading with the right experiences that eventually you want to buy that product, and that's where commerce kicks in.
I like that, and I think in my past experience at Unilever, we had these PIM systems which come from ERP systems where you have like really dry product data, and then you need to enrich that with marketing speak, right? And more information and a video and a how-to explanation. So this is where bringing content platforms and commerce platforms together really helps you to create these experiences.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to steal the phrase, the role of content is falling in love. But I also think a lot about how, and this is where my knowledge is kind of lacking. So apologies if my questions are a bit naive. But I think also part of this idea of the experience of content of that also talks about moving kind of outside of just a website, right? We can talk a little bit more about going to different channels or even physical space. And I wanted to start with you, Rachael, because I think that I believe that we spoke a little bit about putting an iframe of a checkout anywhere, right? Of being able to have that freedom of expanding your experience outside of the website space. Could you speak more to it?
Yeah, I really think that as we move more and more into having a digital commerce experience, the omni-channel experience is going to be pivotal. It's going to be being beyond the storefront and taking what you have as a brand and multiplying that across 10 channels. So, some of that's kind of creating almost a muscle memory for your products and how they're relayed to a consumer so that they feel engaged in it and they kind of already know what to expect. But then also, kind of creating like a reinforcing behavior around these experiences and how people interact. And I think that is pivotal to really recreating what feels like a physical space digitally. And really taking that idea of brand recognition and elevating it.
Can you expand more on that phrase of what was it? Reinforcing a feeling, I think was the term.
Yeah. So I used to be a teacher, and I did a lot of like behavioral reinforcement with students in the past. And I feel like there's a similar thing that we do with really good UX and UI, where we're reinforcing the behaviors of users to do a certain action, but it's because they feel comfortable. They feel that sense of like, okay, I understand. I know what I'm doing here. I feel comfortable here. And when you have really great UX, UI content, and it's structured in a way that is always kind of similar between the channels that you're working through, you kind of reinforce this behavior of usership and community really within your product.
That's really cool to hear. I'd never thought of it that way. And I think speaking of community, maybe going in a little bit in the opposite direction, Filippo, we spoke a little bit about the global experience, about how different audiences across the world shop in different ways and use omnichannel in different ways. And my guess is that the global market is more important than ever now that we've moved to doing things more remotely. I was wondering if you could speak about that, about being headless and experience in a global context.
Yeah, sure. So being global doesn't mean just translating content into different languages, which is something that was maybe enough since some years ago, some years ago. But now, it is still related to personalization, because when you personalize your customer experience, you need to consider also their culture. In some countries, people don't want to pay with credit card. In other countries, they want to pay by installments. So for sure, providing the customer currency, the local currency, the local payment methods, it's about so the challenge, because it's a challenge to be one global brand. You want to be one global brand and to perceive as one global brand, but then to localize your message, your business model, your inventory, your payments, shipments, everything has to be localized for your customers. And again, this is part of the personalization or the personalization discussion that we have. So for sure, it's the localization and the global presence is also means personalizing the experience.
Very cool. That makes sense of having. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Carolina, just on that. No. I think Filippo, when we spoke before, you talked about some of the extreme examples, right? And there are some cultural differences in how people are behaving in their shopping experience. And, for us, we kind of often fall back to a common understanding of how we expect things to look and how the experiences need to be. But I think even the experiences need to be localized a lot, right? And the commerce behavior is very different. Do you want to speak a little bit about the extreme examples in Asia you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at China, the Chinese market, which is probably the biggest in the world, and for sure they have the Chinese market and Chinese people have a different behavior, when it comes to shop online. So what do you mean? What shop online means for someone in the US or in Europe is very different from what it means in China. You shop on WeChat. I mean, actually, you do everything on WeChat. You do from shopping online to booking, an apartment. I mean, it's all done on WeChat or in big malls like Tmall or JD.com. I mean, there are these big malls. So if you also having a website in China, maybe it's not your primary channel as a brand. You want to have it because it's for your brand, because it's for your brand recognition. But talking about shopping, it is not really shouldn't be probably the priority. Again, it's difficult to generalize because it depends on the industry. But really, I think that the Chinese market is an extreme example, and probably not that extreme. Maybe in the future, more and more things will come also in the Western world. We should take a look at what is happening in China and maybe have some flavor of what is going to happen in the Western world. Again, if you they have also different tastes. When we last spoke, Markus, we were talking about in Europe and in US, so we like to have this clean design, this Apple style design, all clean, very space, all very premium and luxury. And if you go to Tmall or some or WeChat, it's all very crowded of banners and messages and promotions and everything else. I mean, this is for sure. If you look at it, it feels a bit strange, also for me. But I'm looking at that kind of experiences with much interest because I expect those experiences to have an impact on the Western world as well.
Yeah, I guess our experiences feel strange to them, right?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
No right or wrong in here.
Maybe they don't understand. Yeah, maybe they don't understand how we can buy with this clean design. Yeah,
I think it also speaks to the importance of having a level of customization and control over your experience, right? But you're going to have consumers who have different expectations, as we spoke about, and different needs. So being able to plug and play, so to speak, with your data and content to serve those audiences makes a lot of sense. So I want to speak a little bit about this idea of your developers and users realizing they need to have this sort of more fine-grained control over these experiences. I was wondering, you probably interface a lot directly with your users. I was wondering what kinds of control and customization they like to use. I might start with you, Filippo.
Yeah. So Commerce Layer is a commerce API. So when someone is evaluating Commerce Layer, they have already made this switch. They to go headless or to go, because we don't provide this. We don't provide any monolithic option. We don't provide any template So I think that Ray said it right, because headless is not for everyone, because the smaller clients just want to go online to get a template and to spend some money. I mean, they have a low budget. They want to go online. So we are not talking about our community. We are not a platform for these cases. But when a developer is involved, regardless the brand is large or small, maybe they want to evaluate a commerce API like ours, because and also the role of the developers, also the decision-making process is, in our experience, is becoming more and more important, because they can really, and this also goes back to the question about why headless. Developers want to go headless because they want to work with React or Vue, or they want to use Sanity, or they want to use another CMS. They do want to use their tools, and they fight for using their tools, because they really, and so, and at the same time, they become, so the business people trust them more and more, because again, they are understanding more and more that developers, I mean, I'm a developer myself, and developers do that for a reason, and so it's not just because they like a language rather than another. Ultimately, the benefit that developers are targeting, that are 90% of the time performance and being fast and reducing the time to market, translate into big benefits for the business, and so they are getting more attention for the business users.
We're short on time, but I do want to speak to both of you, Lars and Ray, as well, about how developers are driving the choices. I was wondering, Lars, do you see a lot of developer-driven decision-making in the personalization space?
Yeah, definitely. I would almost go back and describe what we have seen as more like this pendulum that have been going back and forward between IT and marketing. We started, when we first did the CMS, that was more IT driven. Then marketers wanted more control and control experiences. Then it became much more marketing led, and that's the bird of the Swedes, because they were very focused on marketers. What we have seen in the last 2-3 years with the rise of Jamstack, and with JavaScript winning the web and all these amazing frameworks that allows you as a developer to move super fast, is that is becoming much more IT developer driven again. So we are definitely seeing it, and part of that is also the ecosystem around the stack. So you have search, obviously you have content, commerce, context, and you have different third-party APIs. Because of these third-party APIs, developers has more to say when it also comes to personalization, because all of the sudden, the in-the-moment intent, the context, can also be used across those different technologies. So context can be used with search. Applying context to a search-driven list will now bring up that content that is most relevant based on the user's in-the-moment intent. The true value for the business is really where it intersects. So developers get the freedom and flexibility they need. They can tap into context, use it in any customized components, but you are not leaving the marketers behind, because that is what have happened with this pendulum. When it have swung from one side to the other side, then it's, oh, now we're leaving the marketer side and we go all IT, or now we are leaving the IT side and we go all marketing. The best is really that intersection where marketers have control. It's easy for them to work with the different tools, but you also empower the developers to take that and use that in their custom components, in a search list, and ultimately what both empowers is to create the unique, memorable experiences that we strive for as organizations.
Thank you. Ray, do you want to close us out with some final words on the developer community and experience and how it brings people together, maybe?
Yeah. I started out in development as well, and moved into DevRel. And what I've noticed is really the enablement piece that developers bring. They enable so much for a business to be able to do more and have more capabilities. And that's what I think also Headless brings, is it just opens up more doors to more capabilities. We have a lot of great tooling. The web is a lot less scary than it used to be. normal people have so many more tools and options to be able to do low code or no code. And that's enabled by developers. So if anything to learn from, going headless or, in e-commerce in general, is that the more you can enable, the better experiences you're going to have.
That was really wonderful. I think that's great. Does anyone else have any final words? I don't have any closing notes, but this has been really helpful. I think thinking about how we're serving our customers better and how things are changing so rapidly, it feels good to know that we're keeping up.
Yeah, I think what I've been thinking about listening to all of you, I like the way the industry is shifting in the discussion around moving things into consumer experiences. This is really, and people have been talking about this for such a long time, to put the consumer at the center, but often it was just like an empty promise. And I think we're really shifting towards that. If I remember back many years where the discussion was about who owns the glass, is it the commerce tool or is it the CMS, both monolithic applications? Now this discussion has kind of disappeared, and it's really about how can we make the website fast? How can we make the website accessible? So it's a much more purposeful discussion, and I'm really looking forward to where this takes us. And I think, as Lars and Filippo said earlier, and I think Ray, you said that as well, future-proofing our stack, so that people don't have to redo everything every time there is a new trend coming. And I think our new API-driven economy is really going in that direction. And I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, everybody. I think that's our time. So I guess we'll hop off the studio. Thanks so much.